Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to this session of the Great Books course that Georgie Szabo and I convene each year, and we've done it now for, oh boy, it's 7 or 8 years as we select some of the great books of human literature, both East and West, and ancient and modern, across an array of subjects. And today, I want to finish my discourse started last month in November on the book by Richard Dolan called After Disclosure, referring to that moment in time when the human race discloses to itself something it's known from the beginning of time, and that is that we are not alone, that extraterrestrial intelligences not only exist, but they've been visiting planet Earth for millennia, and that there's now evidence, spacecraft, alien bodies, to make that an incontrovertible truth. And so Richard Dolan talks about the world after disclosure. And first, I just want to say that my time is a little bit limited today. So we're going to go for only an hour rather than the customary 90 minutes. But that'll have to suffice for today. And I want to bring everybody first up to speed on some of the developments. As you know, I'm here in Washington, D.C. I'm working as the director of the Washington office of the New Paradigm Institute, which is dedicated to extraterrestrial contact, UAP disclosure, unidentified anomalous phenomena. I continue, obviously, to be president of Ubiquity University, and I convene each day Humanity Rising, and I'm active in the university, but I've taken on this additional responsibility because the advent of disclosure about extraterrestrials on Earth is a momentous event in the history of humankind. I'm very pleased to say that after months of lobbying and writing Congress people and calling people and all kinds of politicking around Capitol Hill, the endeavor has been successful, and the UAP Disclosure Act, as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, is now this week, I think today, by the U.S. Senate, going to be passed, and then with the House of Representatives will be passed tomorrow or by the end of the week, and the bill will go to President Biden for his signature. And on the day that President Biden signs into law the disclosure of unidentified anomalous phenomena, that will be a very great day, an extraordinary milestone for this event. I would say that it's arguably the most important piece of legislation in human history, because it's not about human governance. It's not about human rights or a law to govern which side of the road you drive on, or whether there's democratic rights or not democratic rights, and who gets to vote, and what the economic policies are. But this is announcing that there is incontrovertible evidence of alien spacecraft, alien bodies in the possession of the U.S. government. The law will state that the information, all the information gathered by government agencies and contracting corporations need to be passed to the National Archives. and that there will be 3 committees in the Senate and 3 committees in the House of Representatives, government operations, over armed services, and intelligence, that will oversee this process. And this is really a work of real statecraft, because it embeds the oversight of the process of gathering the information and disseminating the information among elected representatives of the people. It's really extraordinary. So that's where we are as we convene today on, let's see, it's the 12th of December, 2023. And hopefully around about the 20th of December, and we'll keep everybody informed, because we're going to do a special session of Humanity Rising on the day that Biden signs the legislation. And then we'll be talking about this the first week that we reconvene in January, the week of January 8th, and onwards into the year. ET contact, the implications of ET presence on Earth will be a major theme for Humanity Rising. And also, Ubiquity University is partnering with the New Paradigm Institute to create a program in ET studies. And the New Paradigm Institute will develop a whole body of courses on the history, the law, the politics, the phenomenology of extraterrestrials. And then Ubiquity will convene a parallel certificate program in science and consciousness of extraterrestrials. You know, what does the science say? What is the consciousness that we need to have so that we can commune with extraterrestrials that we understand are communicating with us and have been here for some time. So what I would like to do for the balance of my time today is begin to share with you very generally, because it's very limited amount of time, but very, I would say, categorically, because there's different aspects of this phenomenon that we're learning about. What is it that we generally know about the extraterrestrials, that particularly that have been visiting planet Earth since the end of the Second World War? I mentioned in the first lecture this simultaneity between the advent of nuclear weapons technology, Albert Hoffman's discovery of LSD, and the appearance of ETs. They all happened within literally months of each other. And as someone trained in Jungian depth psychology, that is very profoundly synchronistic. And it's also synchronistic that nearly 80 years later, the world teeters on the brink of nuclear war in Ukraine and in Gaza. Psychedelic drugs that have been repressed for most of the last 75, 80 years are experiencing a resurgence. And the phenomenon of visitations by extraterrestrials is reaching a crescendo. It's very interesting that the UFO phenomenon, this is the first point that I want to make, has been global, not limited to the United States, But literally, it's been a global phenomenon in the West and the East and the North and the South. Countries all over the world have experienced UFO sightings, landings. There's been interactions with extraterrestrial beings that have been reported around the world. It's estimated by Richard Dolan that in the United States alone, there's around 10,000 sightings a year, and there may be 3 or 4 or 5 times that many around the world. So what we're dealing with is not a phenomenon where there's a couple people, in the desert that hear something and it's sporadic and isolated. The UAP domain, the unidentified anomalous phenomena, is worldwide. And if you track the number of sightings over the last 75 years, they're going up and up and up and up and up. I mentioned, but it's worth reviewing, that the consistent report from people who assert that they've experienced ET communication is that they have been telling people around the world that it is a time to stop killing each other. It's time to stop destroying the planet. And in particular, it's time to stop our nuclear weapons program. There's evidence not only in the United States, but in Russia and in China and Great Britain, the countries that have nuclear weapons, that extraterrestrial craft have flown not only around nuclear weapons facilities, but on a number of occasions, both on land and on sea. They've actually closed nuclear weapons silos down for periods of time. They have shut down all the electrics and computers on aircraft carriers and various warships of the US and Russian navies. They've buzzed fighter pilots that have been tracking them, whether Iranian or Brazilian or Chilean or Chinese or Russian. They've had a particular attention on the military arms race between the superpowers, and the consistent message has been that this is dangerous and the human race needs to stop it. And the general framework of what they've been saying is that the human species has become like a virus in the planetary ecosystem. We're destroying each other, and we're destroying our host. And if humanity is going to survive its ET moment, it has to radically transform human relations and humanity's relationship with the larger ecosystem. And if we do not, there is a clear possibility that we would be fairly radically either eliminated or governed. And that leads me to what we know about the aliens themselves. It's very interesting. Let me provide a caveat first, because the information about UFOs, the UAP, has been the most closely guarded information in the history of the world. Information about extraterrestrials on Earth have been more closely guarded than even nuclear weapons secrets. There's been a systematic campaign to trivialize and marginalize and sensationalize anything to do with UFOs, so that if you even talk about it, you're considered slightly crazy. That has been a deliberate campaign by the Central Intelligence Agency and the US military around the world through their control of the mainstream media. And so anything that one says about extraterrestrial beings in the initial reception of it strains credulity. And I understand that. So what I'm just going to summarize is what Richard Dolan, whose book I'm referring to after disclosure, he's the great historian of UFOs, and he's written a massive 2-volume work on UFOs in the national security state, which I've been reading. He's written an extraordinary book called Alien Agendas, which I recommend to everyone. He's just about ready to publish another massive 500, 600, 700-page book on what they call USOs, unidentified submerged objects, because it's apparent that the ETs are as active under the water as they are in the air. And that's an important observation to make, that the craft that they operate are capable of going from 80,000 feet up into the air to zero in a twinkling of an eye. They can go at thousands of miles an hour and make a right-hand turn without losing velocity. They can go from the air to the sea and travel underwater at extremely high speeds. The fastest submarine can go about 35, 40 miles an hour. And these these USOs, unidentified submerged objects, can go apparently several hundred miles an hour, and then go up in the air and disappear into space. Extraordinary. They're transmedia, they're transmodality. They don't appear to be in any way limited by 21st century physics. And they appear to have cracked the code around gravity, and they appear to have understood the physics of zero-point energy, so that they can literally create an envelope around themselves and their craft that allow them to go into any medium: water, air, ice, land, without any friction. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. And the other pieces of evidence are that the alien bodies that have been found are indicating that there's different kinds of extraterrestrials. It's not just one species, as it were, but there's been multiple species. The most common is what are usually referred to as the grays. And you've seen, if you've seen the movie E.T. by Steven Spielberg, the very small, 3 to 4 foot high, large head, no hair, kind of white, grayish color, with limbs that go down to almost to the knee, big round eyes. Sometimes they have a mouth, sometimes they don't. Apparently, some of them get their nutrients through the skin. They don't appear to have genitals, so it's not clear how they procreate. So those are the grays that most people think of when they think of extraterrestrial beings. But there are also other kinds, and there's shorter grays and there's taller grays. And it seems from the observation of people have been abducted, or people have seen them operate after they've left spacecraft and so forth and so on, that the taller grays are in charge, and that the shorter grays seem to be like worker bees. And one of the things that's unclear, are these real beings at all? Are these AI, cyber beings? And we've seen a lot of science fiction movies now, the Terminator and Robot, iRobot, and so forth and so on, of where computer-aided technology can create simulated beings. And if you think of a civilization 1 million years advanced beyond planet Earth, we have really no idea who or what these beings are. Are they just droids? Think of Star Wars, where, the Empire is sending, droids out into the galaxy looking for life forms, D2E2, and, the various computer objects that could communicate and speak multiple languages and so forth and so on. Now, those are all attempts to understand the complexity and the miracle of extraterrestrial. You think of the saloon scene in Star Wars 4, where Luke Skywalker and Han Solo go into the bar, and all these different creatures. Well, it turns out that in addition to these grays, which are basically humanoid, I would say, there's what they call the mantids, and they look a bit like praying mantises. There's also reptilian extraterrestrials, and it appears that the mantids, in the hierarchy that we can observe about the extraterrestrials, are over the grays, because when people have seen them interact, it seems that the mantids and the reptilian ETs are sort of up the food chain, but it's not clear. One of the other phenomena that has been observed now consistently globally by hundreds and thousands of people is that there are abductions, that they come in the middle of the night, or they stop a car on the side of the road. Very famous case in 1960 of Barney and Betty Hill, that couple in New Hampshire that was just driving along, and all of a sudden they get kind of pulled over by this huge craft, and they kind of disappear for 3 hours and then find themselves back in their car driving home, and with no memory, but this vague sense that something immense happened. And then they went through hypnotherapy. John Mack the psychiatrist at Harvard, used a holotropic breath work with people who had experienced abductions. And so that they go through this process. And what they report is that when they're accosted by these beings, they're communicating in mental telepathy. And they have a capacity to calm the person down. One of the things that seems to be true about the extraterrestrials is that the way they communicate telepathically is on the frequency, in the frequencies that we humans experience as a meditative state. So when you talk with the ETs, it's at the the delta and kind of gamma wavelengths of the brain. And that's important in terms of training, which is what we're going to be developing starting in the new year's training programs in not only the history, law, and politics, but also in science and consciousness and how to communicate with the extraterrestrials, as I indicated. And so that's very important. And then they're kind of beamed up. Sometimes they're taken up in craft, and they're taken into these large spacecraft. And they've all kinds of reports that they poke the people and they draw blood and they draw semen from the men, and they'll withdraw eggs from the women. They're interested in who we are. There's extensive evidence from reports that there's a hybrid program, that they're crossbreeding between humans and ETs, and there's very human-looking extraterrestrials that exist not only on Earth in secret communities, but also reside in spacecraft in other dimensions. Women have reported that during the abduction, they're given babies to hold. And they've also witnessed these big floating tanks. In the movie Avatar, the avatars are kept in these floating tanks. And they report that that's how they keep some of these hybrid babies and even adults that have been hybridized or co-created in some way. It's quite extraordinary. There's also indication that the U.S. government has been in negotiations with some of these ETs. And there's a very famous instance in 1954 when President Eisenhower apparently disappeared for about 8 hours and was taken to a secret base and met with the extraterrestrials. And so there's a lot of evidence that they've been very active. There's also many reports that they have been building and operating in bases in different places deep in the side of mountains, like around Mount Shasta in California or the Carpathian Mountains in Romania. There's evidence that they have bases underneath the ocean floor off the coast of Baja in California, in the Caribbean, in the Black Sea, etc. So one of the things that I'm beginning to take in as I'm studying this more and more and more and more is they are all around. More and more people are experiencing them. They have a permanent presence here on the planet, and they appear to have some kind of plan of either a hybrid human ET civilization. No one quite knows at the moment, but there are some researchers who say that the information indicates that they've been planning something, maybe because we're so out of control. It's entirely conceivable that because the human race is so out of touch with reality, we're so violent, we're so cruel. And I would just refer anybody who doubts that to what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians in Gaza today, as we speak. The blanket bombing of one of the most densely populated centers in the world is being firebombed by the Israeli military, and all their weapons, their airplanes, their tanks say made in USA. The level of barbarism and ethnic cleansing and genocide that's going on in Gaza today is replicated in various forms around the world and has been ever thus for a very long time. And if I was an ET and I was coming to planet Earth from 1 million years into the future, I watched the barbaric behavior of how we treat each other, how we treat the ecosystem, how we're polluting what must be one of the most pristine and beautiful life planets anywhere in the universe. I would conclude that the human race needs to be taken out. That's my own conjecture. I have no way of knowing. But if you looked at the situation from a cosmic, objective point of view, one would conclude that unless the human race engages in radical transformation, it is not worthy of its ET moment. And that's one reason why I took up this additional responsibility to come to Washington and work on UAP disclosure. How do we take this information out into the world, now codified into law by the US government, that we are not alone and that human beings need to radically reevaluate who and what they are on this planet and take those steps necessary to recalibrate our identity, this time within a cosmic context. There's many other things that I could say about it, but we're now entering the realm of AD. My own belief is that within a few years, we're no longer going to be talking about 2023 or 2024. That's just based on the Christian calendar. And the Christian calendar is one of many calendars. There's no reason why we should be using the Christian calendar, except for the fact that the Caucasian race in Western Europe conquered the world. Western civilization conquered the world. But we're now moving beyond that. And I think very quickly we're going to refer to BD, before disclosure, and after disclosure. And I think the zero moment is going to be when President Joe Biden signs into law in about a week to 10 days the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024 that has embedded in it an amendment calling for complete UAP disclosure to the American and world publics. That's an extraordinary moment. And that will demarcate a new era in the history of our kind and gives us an unprecedented opportunity to radically reformulate the very identity of humanity on this earth. So I will stop here and let's see who the participants are here. Let's have any comments that anybody wants to make. If you have a comment, just go to the bottom of your screen and you can raise your hand. We have about 15 minutes. And so I'd love to hear any comments that any of you would like to make. Oh, I see Casper's on. Casper Drummond. Casper, if you're anywhere near a video, I'd love to have your comment on this. Cindy Bledsoe. Cindy, you ought to say something. So anyway, just raise your hands and I'll bring you on for any comments or questions that you want to make. Randy. Here we go. Allow you to talk. Unmute. There we go. How are you, my friend? You're live. So Randy, make your comment, question. Yeah, Randy?
Well, he was unmuted and then he muted himself. So I'm going to ask him to mute himself.
Oh, okay.
Hello,
Yeah.
Jim. Can you hear me?
There we go. There we go. Randy.
I can't hear you, so
Oh.
I've got a problem. I'll work at it and get back on.
Okay. Or why don't you ask? Oops, no, he can't hear me. That's right. All right. Anyone else want to jump in? Okay, Dave McQuarrie. Dave, I'm going to allow you to talk. So you just unmute yourself and can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Jim.
Oh, good. Hey, Dave.
Where's my video? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm speechless, Jim. Basically, all I can really say is, wow. And, it's hopefully in our insanity, we can recognize how significant a moment this is.
Exactly.
And that's about all I can say.
Yeah.
It's so phenomenal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wish you in your position the absolute best.
Well, thank you. And I think what all of us can do, Dave, you up there in Canada, is let as many people as all of us can know that this piece of legislation has been passed and that we're now in a new era and that the Canadian government should do the same. And the kind of genius of the US law for a change is it's a model that can be replicated everywhere. Canada has had many UFO sightings over the decades, some extremely famous, like the one in Nova Scotia in the early 70s. So the campaign is to turn over all information to the National Archives of the country, empower the Parliament to begin working out the implications of this information. If we're not alone, or rather, since we are not alone, what does this imply? What does it imply for politics, for culture, for technology, for energy, etc.? How do we start to work all this out? So all of us can become crusaders now for a completely different kind of human conversation.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Randy, are you with us?
I'm trying. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. So
Okay.
please go ahead.
I'm delighted that you're optimistic about the benign nature of the ETs, and I think that's a great place to be. One of the things that both Dolan and Zabel, as well as Eric Hoffer, talk about is that there's the possibility that not everybody is going to be so optimistic about the benign nature of the ET, and that might lead to civil unrest. Is that something that you're working to contain, to work with as you do the disclosure piece?
Yeah, I think you're asking a very profound question, Randy, in terms of the nature of the extraterrestrials. One thing for sure is that the ancient accounts, going back into the Mahabharata in ancient India, or the Enuma Elish, the creation epic in ancient Sumeria, etc. There's accounts of extraterrestrial beings who were not benevolent. They were, in fact, malevolent, in the same way that our conquistadors were malevolent when they conquered the Western Hemisphere and Asia. So that's very important. Many ancient stories, including in the Bible, that the myths and legends around Lucifer, that there was a rebellion in the kind of the cosmic hierarchy of things, and our planet was a part of the breakaway. So if you look at the Urantia book or a number of ancient mythologies, there's a battle in the cosmos, just like there's a battle in the heart of every human being, and that what we grapple with on our Earth are the same things that extraterrestrials have grappled with in terms of this cosmic dance between the light and the dark, and the yin and the yang, and the masculine and the feminine. And the Urantia book in particular, if you haven't looked at the sections pertaining to extraterrestrials, is quite illuminating, that there's a cosmic truth that pervades every one of the trillions of galaxies that we know to exist. And it has to do with what I just described. And that in each planet, or each place in the cosmic ecosystem where life forms have developed, they've been shaped by the gravity, by the humidity, by the temperatures, by the atmosphere, by whether there's water or there isn't water, so that they turn out physically in different ways, given the configuration and relationships of these basic physical laws. But at a spiritual level, all of us are grappling with the same thing. So the command to love your neighbor, the command to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To be honest, to be compassionate, is as true on Alpha Centauri or SETI Prime as it is on planet Earth. And that's an interesting notion that may provide a common denominator between humans and the extraterrestrials. And one of the reasons why the extraterrestrials, who apparently have been coming since the Second World War, appear not to be malevolent, not to be on the dark side, but generally have been observing us very intently and scientifically. And insofar as we know, the latest sort of generation of ET presences on the planet have in fact been benign. They're urgently wanting humanity to change its way so that we can redeem this planet and kind of redeem the planet to go back to our original primordial state of light, having endured for many millennia a certain darkness on the planet, which we see all around us because of the genetic engineering of ETs thousands of years ago. That's the story of the Urantia book. That's the story of the fall. And it's embedded in the collective memory of many traditions that we were born pure, and then there was some kind of a rebellion. There was some kind of a revolt, some kind of fall of humanity into a baser, more provincial, more cruel and violent way of being in the world that has condemned us to what we're doing now in Gaza, what we're doing now in Ukraine, what we're doing against the environment, what we're doing against young people, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very complex. There's no way to really know what the outcome is. And if you add in what I mentioned before, 80 years of complete secrecy and ridicule, the information we have available is very distorted. And so part of what we need to do is bring this out into the light of day. And it may be that very process of bringing out of the darkness the information into the light that will be the key to our redemption, because it's the truth that sets us free. And that's why disclosure is so fundamentally, not only historically, but morally an imperative for humanity. We just need to know the truth, whatever that truth is, and to greet that truth in an open-hearted way. And if they're malevolent, Gandhi taught us how to treat malevolence. Martin Luther King taught us a response to malevolence. We've encountered it in our own history. We know the power of nonviolence and love and compassion. And so that's what the message that we're taking out into the public domain. But great question, and many, many speculations. Okay, everyone, since there are no more questions, and I've got to get prepared for this meeting that's coming up as we make sure that the House and the Senate vote and do so in the right way. This week is the final week after a very long multi-year campaign. So I will say goodbye, and then in the new year, this will be our final lecture for 2023. And then in the new year, we have really a stellar group that are going to be joining Georgie and I. I always start off in January, February, and she does November, December. And we've got a number of people that will be speaking. Some of our own students, Linda White, Ren Butler, and others that will be speaking on books that have been very influential in their lives. I'm going to start out in January and February by revisiting Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Sprach Zarathustra. It's one of my favorite books of all time. Thus Sprach Zarathustra. What is
Jim,
the...
yeah. Jim,
Yeah,
how
hey.
will you be keeping us posted as to the advances in this conversation?
Well, we're talking about it almost every day on Humanity Rising, and we're going to start a special newsletter. We're going to be doing a lot of activity on this. So just stay tuned to Humanity Rising. We're going to do a send out to everybody on every list we can think of the day that Biden signs the bill, which is the beginning of AD, after disclosure. We're going to be doing a special multi-hour program on Humanity Rising with Danny Sheehan and Richard Dolan and Steve Bassett and various other luminaries in the UAP disclosure campaign and movement. And then the first week in January, we come back the week of January 8th, and then the week of January 15th. It's all going to be about UAP disclosure. It's going to be very, very exciting, everyone. So stay tuned. This is historic, and we're right at the epicenter of it all, being here in Washington and disclosing the information day by day on Humanity Rising.
Wow. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Dave. All right, everyone, be well. Have a wonderful holiday wherever you are and whatever God you celebrate. In the end, it's about hearth and home. Hug someone, love them all, eat well, enjoy the solstice, and then we'll see you in the new year. Bye, everyone.